Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Girl Trek's Black History Boot Camp. It's a 21-day walking meditation series. It's powered by the Million Black Women of Girl Trek. It's co-hosted by myself, Vanessa. I'm here in DC, and it's co-hosted by Morgan, who I'm sure I'm joined on the line by, and we are so grateful and so happy to be walking on this Friday with all of the women who have joined us live. Are you there, Morgan?
I don't know how to act like the last 5 minutes didn't happen. It's hilarious.
We just had a little technical difficulties. We reset. We good. We just had a little technical difficulties.
No, I know. I think it's not that big of a deal. It was a whole restart. It was all of that. I don't know how to come into this. I don't know how to enter the conversation. I was like, I'm here. I'm just listening. I'm just here. How you doing? I'm doing good. I'm sitting on my porch. There might be some echo because I'm not walking today. Because I did yoga this morning, then I did 5 hours of meetings, and I'm tired. And I was just like, I'm gonna sit down and listen. If I'm outside, but I did get my 30 minutes in today, y'all. I did get it in today. So shout out to everybody who's out there walking. Shout out to everybody who is exercising in a different form. As long as you are putting the movement, it counts. But I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
That's awesome. I'm so happy you got your 30 minutes in, Morgan. For all of the women, just a reminder who joined us every single day on this call or listen to the recordings. If you walked through at least 30 minutes, and I know these conversations have been more than 30 minutes, congratulations. Give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself a girl, I did it, because you completed what we at Girl Trek call a warrior week. We are intentionally, y'all, walking you through weeks of habit formation so that we can strengthen our bodies, so that we can strengthen our minds, so that we can show up for ourselves, so that we can show up for our families, so that we can show up for our communities. And trust me, we got meetings, we got families, we have so many competing responsibilities. It's hard even for Morgan and I sometimes to find the time to feel like, can we show up on this call live today at noon? So I'm grateful, Morgan, for you and for the accountability. And I'm happy you're on your porch right now as we have this Friday conversation.
I saw this girl on Instagram. She was like, I don't believe in Friday afternoon meetings. So I was laughing. I think it's Ayana. I was like, me either.
Look, come on. Summer Friday, winter Friday, spring Friday. I agree. I actually agree.
She was like, we are productive between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Monday through Thursday. That's what she said. She was like, we can't be productive no other time. It was funny. I thought Black women are so funny. From even yesterday's conversation about technology, like Black women be hilarious on Instagram. That's the thing I didn't say. I'd be cracking up out loud almost every day. It's hilarious.
We are hilarious, and in the footsteps of Lucy Parsons, we can just go ahead and advocate for a 4-day work week or a Friday that ends at noon or whatever. But we're gonna put some brain power behind this, y'all. We're gonna come back with some Lucy Parsons level official policy around how we all need to take off on Fridays at noon. But I'm happy to be here and having this conversation with you all. It feels like the perfect conversation to have on a Friday to close out this week, Morgan. We're going to be talking about Dick Gregory today, y'all. And I promise you to God, this man was the hardest working man in Black history. I don't mean just the hardest working man in entertainment. I don't mean just the hardest working man in comedy. I'm talking about he might have been the most bouted, most hardest working freedom fighter of all, and we're in series 8. But once I did his story, Morgan, I was like, he's like up there. He's like top 3 freedom fighters of the world up there. And I feel like I didn't know as much as I should have about Dick Gregory. So I'm super excited for
you like Harriet Tubman, Paul Robeson, Dick Gregory.
And Dick Gregory.
In that order.
And above Martin Luther King. Above Martin Luther King, y'all. I just to let y'all know. Above Martin Luther King.
It's hilarious to me. I don't know why. It's hilarious.
It's hilarious to me too, because genuinely, this is a conversation today that I was originally titling Truth or Tact. And I was titling it Truth or Tact because Dick Gregory was really a controversial figure known for speaking truth to power. And some people felt like he didn't have enough tact in his truth. But then even as I dive deeper into his story, because the only thing I really ever knew about Dick Gregory earlier on in my life, honestly, was this perception of him as a conspiracy theorist, Morgan. That's the truth. And then later in his life, I knew him as somebody who was like really radical about health, but I didn't understand how deeply it was connected to real liberation and real strategy. I didn't even understand that long before Girl Trek, Dick Gregory said, I'm announcing a plan to increase life expectancy for Black people. And he had a whole strategy and plan around it. So I was like, wow, we are really actually following in the footsteps of Dick Gregory. And in fact, all of the perception I had around him being a conspiracy theorist, now that I'm obviously 8 seasons into Black History Boot Camp, I'm just like, no, this man was speaking truth to power. And now it leads me to a question around, can we see through the lies? Or when we see through the lies, what does that mean in terms of, do we start seeing lies everywhere? Because sometimes when we raise our consciousness and you start to get woke, almost everything looks like it might be questionable. Almost everything, once you start to raise your consciousness, you got to roll through a filter of like, is that true? Do I understand? And what's going on? And Dick Gregory was one of those people who questioned everything, and he questioned everything in powerful ways. He stood up in really powerful ways. So I love his story, and I'm excited to talk about it. What do you know about Dick Gregory, Morgan?
Chemtrails. Like, what? They put chemicals on us. You never heard of chemtrails? Like, you know, when the plane goes and it leaves the marks in the sky. Dick Gregory was like, them is chemicals they releasing. That's what I know about Dick Gregory. I know he was hilarious. I know he had an incredible beard. I know he was just so funny and had impeccable timing when he was on stage, but also most especially in interviews. He made all the interviewers feel uncomfortable because he would just stare at them, and he was hilarious. I love watching his videos. I don't know that much about his civil rights history, so I'm excited to learn more about that. I don't know that much about his personal life. I feel like he was from the Northeast, but I could have made that up. So I'm excited to learn about him.
Yeah, I'm excited too, because he has 10 living children, and I'm praying to God one of those children is either on this line or going to hear this story, because I do think it's a powerful story, and then his activism even goes so much deeper and so much more complicated, even beyond civil rights. So let's start actually at the origin story, because he was actually, Morgan, from the Midwest. He was from St. Louis, Missouri. And
that tracks. Because people in St. Louis be telling the truth. Okay.
Exactly.
True.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He was from St. Louis, Missouri. He excelled early on at school. He was a very smart man. I loved watching older videos of him when he was younger, because the Dick Gregory I knew was like kind of the older, kind of almost crotchety, like yelling into the camera Dick Gregory's, but his younger persona and character was so refined, and her personality was so like refined that you could see how he got radicalized, and you could see how he was already actually, I don't want to say that he got radicalized, he was already, and I'll talk about this in a minute, he was radicalized from the beginning, but he actually had a really strategic and sophisticated way of engaging with his audience around his comedy that was like him standing 10 toes down on business in a way that you almost didn't know if he was telling a joke or not telling a joke. And it's what made his comedy so precise, and it made his comedy so precise after an era where all people knew about Black comedy was like minstrel shows. So they didn't understand a Black man coming up there in a suit and speaking in a way that was like, you know what, I'm gonna tell you this, and it got some biting humor to it, and people was like, wait, was he joking? Was he? You know how some people can kind of tell you off or tell a joke and you're not sure if they really meant it or not? That was Dick Gregory, and he was literally an expert at doing it. So he excelled at a very young age at school in St. Louis, and he actually also, I loved learning about this, he was an excellent track star. He actually won the state championships in Missouri for cross-country running, Morgan. In 1950, he was the state champion in Missouri, and he earned a track scholarship to Southern Illinois University, where he set school records as a half-miler and a miler. He was named Southern Illinois University's top student athlete of the year in 1953. He was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity.
If anybody runs track, that is the hardest race. The 400 meter, 800 meter, half mile, and mile races is the hardest race because they seem like they long distance, but it's really an all-out sprint. I'm saying, like, it's for people who are otherworldly. There ain't no strategy. You just got to sprint for a long time. It's hard. It's so hard. It's a hard race. So you know he was a good athlete.
Yeah, it is a hard race. I do that, and I tried cross country once, by the way, and I came in dead last, y'all. So like, yes, we gotta have.
Oh my God, that is the funniest thing I've pictured all day. That is the hilarious thing. Oh
my grandfather
in high school.
Yeah, no,
I believe in you in high school.
Junior high. My grandpa put me on the cross country team. Shout out to Mercer Island, Washington. They put me all out there, and I not only did I come in dead last, they had to find me because it was like on the wooded trails. It was a mess. But let's focus on Dick Gregory. Let me focus on Dick Gregory for a second. So he was an actual track star. He was named the university's outstanding student athlete in 1953. He was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And in 1954, in the middle of his college career, Morgan, his college career was interrupted because he was drafted to the Army. And so he joined the Army from Southern Illinois University. And it was actually in the Army that his commanding officer had taken notice of his he was always telling jokes like around the Army. And he was like, you know what, you should actually be a comedian. So he actually started performing in the Army. He started performing in talent shows in the Army and like performing all around where they were stationed. He was stationed in Texas. He was stationed in Virginia. And then after the Army, he actually went back to Southern Illinois University, but he decided not to graduate because by the time he got back, he was like, you know what, it was clear to me that they actually just wanted me to run. They just wanted me to be an athlete. They weren't actually concerned about my education. And he was like, I had education enough. So he actually kept it moving, and he left Southern Illinois University with hopes of becoming a professional comedian, and he moved to Chi-Town, which is intentionally, if you were on this live episode, we started with Jesus Walks and Kanye West because talk about a man who sometimes is speaking truth to power, but people are talking about, is he a conspiracy theorist? Is he a this? Is he a that? And I'm saying that I think history will tell a different story for Kanye. I'm praying that it tells a different story for him. And so I wanted to bring in Chi-Town because that is where actually Dick Gregory moved when he wanted to get his start in comedy.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you see what I did. Yeah.
I see what you did with that parallelogram.
It's a good one too, right?
Yes,
because
Kanye,
that's what I'm saying. Like he's gonna. First of all, I am calling long life on Kanye. Dick Gregory lived a long life, and I'm calling long life on Kanye. And I'm just like, like we have so many different seasons in our lives, but I love Kanye's music. I love that he is speaking his truth. I love that he's trying to navigate his mental health challenges and his family challenges in a way that is public, but also with integrity around his own art. So he reminds me so much of Dick Gregory in that way.
He does, and half of what Dick Gregory said had already been come true. We just couldn't believe it in the 90s. We couldn't believe it in the 2000s and the 2010s. Half of that stuff that already came true. So I'm guessing the other half will come true.
Literally.
Yeah.
So 2 years after he left Southern Illinois University, he actually opened up in Chicago, Morgan, his very first club. It was called the Eightplex Club. It was a nightclub in Illinois where he was also doing comedy. The nightclub failed within 1 year, but don't worry, he bounced back. He got a day job at the post office. First of all, I just want you to imagine Dick Gregory working at the post office. So he was working at the post office during the day. Right?
You're talking about what radicalized him. That's what radicalized him. That's when he became grumpy. He was like, okay, take it.
Exactly.
Shout out to postal workers.
Shout out to postal workers. Exactly. He was working at the post office, and then essentially he was touring on the Chitlin circuit. And it wasn't just him. This was a new advent of comedians. Nipsey Russell was coming up at the time. Bill Cosby was coming up at the time. Godfrey Cambridge, another popular comedian, was coming at the time. And they were like a new crop of comedians who weren't doing the like dancing, the stepping, the fetching, and all of that. So they were really in demand all over the country where they were actually going. But it wasn't until Morgan in like the 50s? This was in 1959. So 1958, he opened up the Apex Club. He left school in 1956. 1958, he opened up the Apex Club. 1959, the Apex Club closed. 1960, he started working at the U.S. Post Office and doing comedy on the side. And it was in 1961, he was working at a Black-owned Robert Show bar in Chicago when he was spotted there by none other than Hugh Hefner. And I don't know if you guys know a lot about Hugh Hefner's story, but Hugh Hefner's story also started the founder of Playboy, started famously in Chicago with the famous Playboy Club. Hugh Hefner spotted Dick Gregory and hired him to start working and doing comedy at the Playboy Club in Chicago, and that was his big break. The primary audience of the Playboy Club was white, wealthy people. And Dick Gregory's comedy was like, think Dave Chappelle. It was like, whoa, is he really saying that? Whoa, he was talking about segregation. He was talking about racism. He was calling white folks out their names. He was telling what y'all think. It was really jarring to some folks, but also it was refreshing to others. So after Morgan, he started working with Hugh Hefner at the Playboy Club. He got national popularity and he started traveling all over.
I think there's a psychology to that. I think there's a psychology to that. Like this atonement or this like social flogging at a safe distance where you can have the comfort of like your martini and your beautiful woman and you can get the truth, but it's in a doses that you can swallow, even if it's uncomfortable and prickly. There is some kind of like atonement, like there's some kind of release to that, to somebody to tell you that you're
almost.
Yeah, like guilt alleviation. Yeah, there's something to it. Because I noticed that's like, it's like a dynamic. It's like a thing.
It is a thing, exactly. And so this was Dick Gregory. And it's important that at the time, again, this is like 1963, he's performing mainly to white audiences. He's going all over the country. So he moved from the Chitlin Circuit to then Hugh Hefner discovering him, to then him now getting big and going all over the country. As he got bigger, though, Morgan, people weren't playing. So, yes, there were some people who were like, ooh, I like this truth to power. And there were other people who named him a terrorist and an extreme racist. They were like, we do not want this type of comedy here. This type of comedy is extremely racist to white people. And specifically, he was going to perform at the University of Tennessee. And they revoked his invitation to speak on campuses. And then, this is a powerful story. I love this. The students actually sued the university. And they sued the university in a famous case that actually set a lot of precedent for like how we're talking about how free speech on campuses and stuff. And the students won. So they won the free speech case and they brought him back to the University of Tennessee and he did actually end up performing there. But after he started performing,
can you imagine being a comedian that's that controversial? You know, like beyond Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
And what he has been through, like with his jokes around the trans community and the real pushback that he's gotten from it. Like, I don't know that many comedians who have gotten like a lot of pushback for the content of their comedy. Maybe like their behavior, like Richard Pryor and his drug use or whatever, but not for like the content. It's fascinating.
Exactly
and
right.
One of the things I wanted to say is like, imagine all of this happening behind the backdrop of like Motown. Because when you were talking about Bill Cosby and Nipsey Russell and all of those people like on the Chitlin Circuit with suits on and intellectualism, I was like, yeah, that was kind of like the mid 50s, late. That's why I asked what year it was. And that's when Motown, like Black people were not shucking and jiving no more. We were like distinguished gentlemen. And the comedy went that way too. But then in the 60s, everybody got radicalized with like the Black Power movement and that kind of stuff. So it's so interesting that comedy shifted in that time too. It's really interesting.
It's interesting, and I want to talk about radical because he did something extraordinarily radical in 1964, Morgan. He published his autobiography. And do you know the name of the autobiography?
I think it was Nigga something.
It was Nigga.
Making it up.
That was it.
Oh, right.
The name of the autobiography was Nigga. And he published it first in 1964. It has not.
Why do I know that? Why do I know that? Is the question. I don't know either. It's so random.
But it's a powerful story behind it. First of all, the book has been in continuous publication since he published it. It's never gone out of print. Secondly, the book opens with a dedication to his mother. And he says, wherever you are, if ever you hear the word nigga again, remember they are advertising my book. He said, you didn't die a slave for nothing, mama. This is calculated. He said, you didn't die a slave for nothing, mama. You brought us up. You and all those Negro mothers who gave their kids the strength to go on, to take the thimble to the well, while the whites were lacking buckets. Do you hear what that is? He said his Negro mother taught him to take the thimble to the well while the whites were lacking buckets. He said those of us who weren't destroyed got stronger, got calluses on our soul, and now we are ready to change a system where a white man can destroy a black man with a single word, nigger. And that's why he named his book that. And I loved hearing that story. It was the New York Times.
It is the original reappropriation of the word and putting power into it. Whenever you hear the word, they're promoting my book, is the funniest line I've ever heard. It's so great. And it is like completely appropriating and disempowering it. It is the argument for hip hop and the word nigga that we're going to use it and make money off of it. And he was the original person to do it. It's fascinating. Whatever you believe about the use of the word, it's fascinating.
It is. I totally agree. I loved it. That's why I said it like that. And the New York Times did a really beautiful review of the book at the time. They said it was powerful and ugly and beautiful. A moving story of a man who deeply wants a world without malice and hate and who is doing something about it. I love that they said that because this is the rest of the part of the story of Dick Gregory. He wasn't just a man who talked about it. He was a man who was actually about it. And he spent the rest of his life, Morgan, after he wrote that book, doing deep, intentional work around the world, not just in the United States, to bring about a better world. It started powerfully in 1967 when he decided to run for mayor against Mayor Richard Daley, the mayor of Chicago. I didn't even know that. He lost, but y'all, he wasn't deterred. In 1968, he went toe-to-toe with Richard Nixon. He ran for president. Did you know this?
I did, I think. I think now that you're saying it, it sounds very familiar, but it's hilarious. I love it so much because what better platform do you have? It's what Marianne Williamson did. She was a writer and a poet and a philosopher. Is she thought that she wanted to talk to it's what to some degree is it Cornel West? Who ran?
Yes.
Cornel West.
Oh, Cornel West was up. Cornel West is coming into this story in a minute. Don't you worry.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. He's just creating a platform for you to be able to get out your philosophy on life. It's genius.
That's right. Yes. So yes, Gregory ran for president, Morgan, in 1968. He was a write-in candidate of the Freedom and Peace Party, which had broken off from the Peace and Freedom Party, which was a socialist party that had grown up out of California. He had different, I love this part of the story. This is going to start to get deep into the conspiracy part. He had different running mates in different states. So he actually even had running mates with him. One of his, and they were famous. So he had, I don't know if you remember Dr. Spock, Morgan, but Dr. Spock was a famous pediatrician and he had written all of these books on like childhood development. He was actually one of Dick Gregory's running mates. He was like, yeah, I'm gonna be his running mate, vice president. He was like, I really believe in what this man has to say. But even deeper than that, he had a running mate by the name of Mark Lane. And I got a sidetrack to tell you a little bit about Mark Lane. So Mark Lane was a white man. He was an attorney. He was a New York State legislator, a civil rights activist, and he was he was best known for his leading research around the conspiracy of the JFK assassination. He wrote immediately after JFK was assassinated, he wrote one of the most famous books that accused the FBI and the CIA and several people of being involved in it. And then he also, of course, a lot of people said, oh, he was a kook, but they took it all the way up to Congress. Like his theories actually prompted a lot of politicians to then do some deeper research around the assassination of JFK. But deeper than JFK, Morgan, he wrote with Dick Gregory, I did not know this, a book called Murder in Memphis, which was also about the assassination of Martin Luther King. And they wrote that book together. And in that book, they were saying, they actually, in the book, they referred to Martin Luther King as codename Zorro, which was the CIA's code name for Martin Luther King. And Mark Lane was like, I got all the information. And that book broke down that he believed that the CIA was directly involved in Martin Luther King's assassination, so much so that he actually represented James Earl Ray as his attorney because he didn't think James Earl, who assassinated Dr. King, he didn't actually think he did it. So this matters because when Dick Gregory goes to run for president, he connects with Mark Lane, and they are now making major political waves because people were, Mark Lane was a respected author. He was respected in DC, and they were making actual waves. They didn't make too many waves though, because he only got 47,000 votes when he ran for president. But the point is that he was running a powerful campaign that a lot of the people were starting to pay attention to, and he was surfacing a lot of ideas that were making him both a target and were making him very much of a controversial figure. I love one of the marketing strategies that they used for his presidential campaign is he printed a bunch of fake $1 bills that had his face on it, but people didn't, they actually got circulated into the economy, like especially all over Chicago, and people were actually buying stuff with the Dick Gregory dollar bills. And then like the Department of the Treasury had to go around and they were like,
I will pay somebody $500 US
to find one of these.
A Dick Gregory dollar bill. Like I promise you, if your uncle got one, I will pay $500 for a $1 Dick Gregory bill. It's genius. I'm surprised they didn't get sued for doing that. That's hilarious.
Well, they were going to try to sue him, and they were going to try to arrest him, and I wasn't sure why they didn't, but essentially they did an investigation. But the funniest part of the story is that he was like, y'all should have known it wasn't real, because when black man gonna be on the dollar? He was just like, I was just going to say, what are they going to charge him with? I mean, it's hilarious. Like, it can't really be counterfeiting because it got his face on it. Exactly.
I love Dick Gregory. This is great.
Somebody else, Usher Bucks. Usher actually did this. This is so random. But Usher actually did this at one of his, he had like a big party. He had these strippers, and he gave out all these monies, and the strippers thought it was real, but then when they looked at it, it was actually Usher Bucks, and they was like, oh, they were mad about it. They were mad about it. After he ran for president, Morgan, he got much more deeper and much more intentional around his strategy. So first of all, in 1969, he spoke at the moratorium to end the war in Vietnam and helped to lead a major demonstration in Washington, D.C. He appeared along with shout out to Bob Marley and Patti LaBelle and a bunch of other people. Jimmy Carter was there at a major rally and concert around the anti-apartheid movement. So he was heavily involved in the anti-apartheid movement. His most famous kind of civil activism that we know about, of course, is that he was heavily involved in the civil rights movement. He was deep down in Alabama, and we know a lot about Alabama. He led a major march from the 16th Street Baptist Church. He was down in Selma on the ground. He spoke for 2 hours on a public platform 2 days before the voter registration drive known as Freedom Day. He was there in Watts for the Watts riots, actually helping to coordinate the community. He actually was accidentally shot in the leg by one of the Watts rioters, but said, that's all right, that's how it rolls, and he kept it moving. He played a major role, I didn't know this, in the search of the 3 missing civil rights workers, Morgan, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwimmer, the ones who vanished in Philadelphia. And he met with members of CORE. I love this part of the story. He met with members of CORE, and they actually raised money to put up a ransom. And it was only after Dick Gregory raised money to put up it's not called a ransom. What is it called when you put up money? A reward. He put up a reward to lead to answers, but it put so much pressure on the FBI that the FBI matched his reward. So the FBI really did feel pressure from Dick Gregory, and it was 44 days after Dick Gregory put up the reward that their bodies were actually found, and they were found dead. He was an outspoken
These were the civil rights workers you said in Philly. Were they from Philly, or it happened in Philly? I thought it was down south.
Sorry, so it was Philadelphia, Mississippi. No, the town is called Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Oh, okay.
But the town is a little tiny town in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Sorry about that. But
I think he got a lot of, no, I was just making sure. I was like, dang, was there more civil rights people? I was just making sure it was the right story because I want to repeat this because that's fascinating. I didn't know that about Dick Gregory. And then, Harry Belafonte played a role in all of this too, and Sidney Poitier. And so I'm curious to know like what their relationship was because they were so different in their approach. Yeah. Their approaches were so different. They were both more on the kind of like, especially Sidney Poitier was like respectability and blah 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 blah. So I wonder if they were working in concert, or I'm curious to know what that relationship was like.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm curious too, and gonna do some more research to find out, y'all, and we'll report back to you. I didn't know that he was down there at the 16th Street Baptist Church. I didn't know that he spoke right before the voter registration drive in Selma. I didn't know that he was down on the ground for the Watts riots. What I loved, though, is Morgan, his solidarity and his activism extended deeply beyond even the Black community. In 1966, he and his wife, and shout out to his wife, actually, he and his wife were married for 56 years. They met at the University of Chicago. Yes, they met at the University of Chicago.
You should have started with that receipt. That is
Her name was Lillian Smith. They called her Miss Lil. They had 10 children together. And she was a freedom fighter in her own right. And many of the times when he was arrested, she was often right there next to him being arrested. And when she wasn't arrested, she was going out to get the money to get him out of jail. At one point, even their children were getting arrested with them. And they were intentionally, at one point, she was arrested while she was pregnant, and they told her she could get out. And she was like, no, I'm in solidarity. I'm staying up in here. Like, she was really about it. And then
and they had 10 kids.
They had 11 children, but one passed away within the first year. So they had 10 children who they raised. Yep. And some people did question, it is beautiful. Some people questioned, I saw a little blurb where somebody was like, was he around for his kids or something like that? And then he was like, did Hitler had a dad? And his dad was around. I didn't help him. So don't worry about if I was or wasn't around for my kids. That's
I'm going to tell you who you shouldn't come for. You should never try to come for Dick Gregory. That's not fair. Rest in peace, Dick Gregory, but he was going to clap back so hard.
He's going to clap back so hard. Exactly. Yeah.
Every time I hear that name Lillian, I think about Eddie Murphy overall when he was like, Lillian will not go in the refrigerator. I don't remember the joke, but I can't hear the word Lillian that Eddie Murphy was like raw. I don't know if it was delirious or raw, but I love Eddie Murphy. Shout out to Eddie Murphy and all the comedians who came after Dick Gregory. This is great.
I know. I love bringing even Eddie Murphy's my favorite comedian, so I love bringing his name into this. Hopefully, maybe Eddie Murphy could play Dick Gregory in the movie because he did excellent with Dolomite. I just want to let y'all know. So I don't know who's going to play Dick Gregory in the movie, but yes. But
I wanted Mike Epps to do the Richard Pryor movie. Yeah, I thought that was such good casting. But maybe he could do Dick Gregory because he knows how to do that kind of old Black man, you know, like in his older age, and he could still be debonair for his debonair age. That's a good. You should pitch that. Pitch that to our people in Hollywood.
That's good. And he was in Dolomite. He was good in that movie too. No.
I wonder. This is going to be a stretch, but who used to be married to Mariah Carey? He could also maybe do it.
No, Morgan. Nick Cannon. No.
Nick Cannon. He has something. No, he has some charisma. He really does. I know.
Mm-hmm. I know. I'll rewatch Drumline and see if he can do it, but I don't think so.
Exactly. That's so much shade.
It is.
So rewatch Drumline. Okay, fine. I forgot he was in Drumline. You're right. That ain't the right cast. Okay.
Miss Lil, Dick Gregory, wife, and him, Morgan, they actually traveled in 1966. I love this story. So just imagine what's happening in the world. They actually went to Washington State, my hometown, and they were arrested for illegal net fishing alongside the Nisqually tribe. The tribe was protesting against the state laws that banned forms of fishing other than hook and line because it barred their rights to their traditional way of fishing, and it barred their rights that guaranteed them that through the federal treaty, they could continue their traditional ways. So he and his wife traveled to Washington State to stand in solidarity with the Nisqually people, and they were arrested there in Washington State in violation of the rights there. It gets deeper. In 1980, he was an outspoken activist, Morgan, during the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis in Iran, and he traveled to Tehran to attempt to negotiate the hostages' release. And he engaged in his first, yes, it's hilarious that he was in Tehran trying to negotiate the peace, but It's not, because he was just like, wherever there are oppressed people around the world, I'm going to try to go. And it was in Tehran that he did a hunger strike, and he started to do hunger strikes frequently, as a part of his protest theory, because he was nonviolent. And so he was like, what are the nonviolent ways in which I can actually protest? And he was deeply, deeply, deeply nonviolent. And so, yeah, he went to Tehran. He was standing in solidarity. He marched with Gloria Steinem. He helped to organize one of the largest women's marches in Washington, D.C. He said he was deeply feminist, like he deeply believed, especially that Black women were the most disrespected in the world. And he was like, there is nothing like being next to and with a Black woman. And then, Morgan, after he did the first hunger strike is when he started to change, especially around his health. And I want to talk about Dick Gregory's work and the health work that he's done that a lot of us know him for. But I want to bring in this clip, Tyrene. Play the clip that I just sent you. It's about 2.5, 3 minutes, but it's such a strong clip. And it's from the Black People's Town Hall. I didn't even know there was a such thing, but it was a really powerful. And they had a whole bunch of people there, including Cornel West. And he talks about his transition into vegetarianism, and he talks about a little bit of his transition into the health work that he does. So play that clip, Tyrene, and then I'm gonna come back and tell you a little more.
You came by my house, and my mother said, you care for anything to drink? And you say, just a cold glass of water. You go by somebody's house now, and they say, you care for something to drink? You say, what you got? Because we want Kool-Aid and soda pop.
Is universal health care a cause that you think people, Black people in particular, should rise up and demand?
You know, they can't rise up the man when you don't know how you're going to pay your dinner. When your leg is hurting you with arthritis and you have no insurance. Martin Luther King wasn't out there because he couldn't pay his rent. All the people who lead live comfortable.
What do you think of Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign for dealing with childhood obesity?
Well, let me say this. If the First Lady, Black or white, said cocaine is not bad for you, there'd be a lot of people doing it just because of her position. And so we in this movement here, we just thrilled to death. My mama ain't gonna never give up pork. My mama ain't gonna never give up, Kool-Aid. But to have someone say you have to have nutrition along with it, and then when you start seeing yourself feel better, you will go into it on your own.
Tell me about how you got into vegetarianism.
Well, I watched a Mississippi sheriff in a demonstration kick my wife while she was 9 months pregnant. And so I was telling myself that the only reason I didn't fight him back for that was because I'm nonviolent. And then I decided that if I was nonviolent, it means I shouldn't hit or kill a person. Then I said animals should get the same respect. And at that point, I didn't know nothing about vegetarian. I never heard the word. In 1960, you go to the health food store and see how many African Americans you see coming in. Black folks would come up, well, how come you don't eat steak? Because cows don't eat steak. The meat you eat don't eat meat, huh? In 1960, they thought I was crazy.
Thank you, Tyrene.
He said the meat you eat don't eat meat. It's so good. I love that man. I love watching some Dick Gregory videos. And, shout out to the journalist who was trying to be hard-hitting. But again, don't come for Dick Gregory. That's what I'm saying. You got to know your audience. Don't come for Dick Gregory. And I love that he was supportive of Michelle Obama. You know what I mean? In this kind of very protective way. I really loved that. I
loved it too. So yeah, Morgan, after Dick Gregory became a vegetarian in the 60s, and that story that he told about that Mississippi police officer kicking his wife in the belly, I was just like, the dignity of Black men to still just keep showing up in the ways that we do when we could really, whatever that quote says, it says we haven't burned this stuff down yet. Like, I was just like, no, he wasn't a radical. No, he wasn't a racist. He was just a Black man just out there trying to respond to the times in which he actually lived in. And it was the violence that was put upon him that was actually what we should be calling out. And he actually talks about this a lot in a lot of his stuff. So I just love hearing about that as well. In 1973, Morgan, he wrote his first health book. It was called Natural Diet for Folks Who Eat. Cooking with Mother Nature, and it outlined how fasting and eating vegetarian led to dramatic weight loss. From there, he actually developed a diet drink that was called the Bahamian Diet Nutritional Drink. He went on TV shows to advocate. This is when I think I was younger and started to see him. He went on TV shows to advocate for his diet to help the morbidly obese. In 1984, he founded Health Enterprises, Inc. It was a company that distributed weight loss products. With that company, he made efforts to improve Black folks' life expectancy, Morgan. He said he believed that being poor hindered our nutrition and it caused drug and alcohol abuse. And he was like, we needed to get more nutrient-rich foods. And so that's what he was working on doing. And he introduced, actually, he had a compound, a powdered compound called Slim Safe. He launched that along with a couple of other nutritional supplements that he distributed all over the world. And then in 1985, Morgan, the Ethiopian government, this is what I'm saying, when he was doing this stuff in America, everybody was like, he's a quack, he's a conspiracy theorist. They was like, how does man go from being over here talking about the war and stuff to now he's talking about health? But in 1985, Morgan, the Ethiopian government adopted his formula to combat malnutrition during a period of famine in the country. And it was, they said, the most effective formula that they had used to fight against famine. So he clearly was onto something around the nutrient-dense stuff that he was actually making. His clients included Muhammad Ali. A famous sports guy named Walter Hudson. Another guy named Walter Hudson, who at the time was the fattest person alive. He helped him lose 680 pounds. He started working, and that's when actually he met Cornel West, Morgan. Like at the end of the 90s, he started working with Cornel West, and they were like working around health stuff, and then they started working around like a bunch of other stuff. But he said, just like he said in that link, that basically if we're thinking about civil rights, if we're thinking about our freedom, if we are thinking about being nonviolent, we both have to think about the earth, we have to think about the animals, and we have to acknowledge that the systemic barriers in this country are keeping us unwell, and we have to develop alternative pathways and routes to keep ourselves nutritionally well. So he was a huge.
I've been trying to order. I've been trying to order food for like 10 minutes, and every time I'll be like, I'm gonna just get the Szechuan shrimp. And every time it'd be like, we're not gonna kill no animals. I'm like, damn it, Dick Gregory, damn it. Even beyond the grave, I can't get no shrimp. I mean, the thing is I've been plant-based, for so long, Vanessa. I really have been trying to add in fruits and vegetables and all kinds of stuff. I was just talking to my sister about like how much I love mushrooms, and she was like, I love mushrooms, and she got a new nutritional coach, and we're really trying to do it. And when your refrigerator be bare and your mouth be dry and you 5 hours in the meeting and you on Black History Boot Camp, you be like, let me just give me some chicken wings. But that's when you really got to have some discipline and go to the grocery store. Dick Gregory.
No, actually, I have a confession. Yesterday, during the Black History Boot Camp that you so eloquently led about the protest, I was standing right outside. It was called Grandma's House Szechuan Chinese in New York. And I all kept saying it was loud. And I was like, I'm not going to have time to go back to this conference and eat this bad conference food. And I was like, I just want to give me some of these spring rolls. So every time he was talking, I was just like, no, I got to focus. I can't be trying to order my food while I'm on this call. But then literally, I was standing at the door. The people were looking at me the whole time. And as soon as you hung up the phone, I was like, I would like to order spring rolls. I would like some of them spicy cucumbers. And I sat down there and I ate before going back to that conference because I was just like, I need something satisfying and I can't be rushing back to this conference. So I feel you on it. I feel you, y'all.
But I'm inspired by him. That's mostly what I'm trying to say. I'm inspired by Dick Gregory. All these comedians, I've had the great pleasure of like actually being around so many comedians just because we went to college in LA. And I don't know if you remember, but like the Comedy Store, that's where me and Amber and all used to hang out. Because her boyfriend Jay used to be the talent booker. So every single of the 90s or 2000s, like famous comedian, we used to hang out with just acting regular. And then later in life, I just kept hanging out with a lot of comedians and stuff. And like, I was just like, they are the smartest, but like overwhelmingly like analytical people where they can't unsee the truth, right? And so like it'd be funny on stage, but they don't always be fun to hang out with because they just are intense. You know what I'm saying? They just be intense. And I can imagine in Dick Gregory's mind that he could just see injustice everywhere. He could just see it everywhere. And he was so articulate that he was like, I got to talk about it and I got to do something about it, is the brave part. So I'm so inspired by the story. And I just be, every day on Black History Boot Camp, I just be like, ooh, I could do something more. I could do something different. I could be more nonviolent. I can be more like supportive of my friends, family, and loved ones, or I could be braver. Like, I'm so inspired by this series of Black History Boot Camp. I really am.
I am too. And I will end the story about Dick Gregory by saying exactly what you said about the comedians is correct. And one of the things I loved about Dick Gregory's story is that so many comedians' story is hampered by tales of drug addiction or mental health or spousal violence or all sorts of tragedies that seem to come with this gift of humor. And Dick Gregory's story didn't go that way. He moved to Washington, D.C. He and Miss Lil, they lived here on the East Coast in D.C. for a really long time. He was super healthy. They were active vegetarians. He was still active in his activism. He died at 84 years old in 2017 of heart failure. But I was like, no, he lived a long, healthy life, especially for a Black man. And I was like, and he didn't have those issues. And to consider that he was shot in the leg during the Watts riot, was in Tehran, trying to negotiate the hostages, was down there in Selma organizing, was telling the FBI, you got to put money up, was doing all of this work. Like to consider all of those things and to know that he was a Black man who lived to be 84 years old, like I just celebrate him. It's one of the favorite stories that I've definitely learned about. That's why I was like, he was really the hardest working Black man in Black history, because he was over y'all. He was in the feminist movement. I'm just saying, name another Black man who was like, yes, Gloria Steinem, I will show up and help organize for you. Like, it's just so beautiful.
And he was demonized because he was telling the truth always. But it's also why he had so much street credit. Because every 5%er I know, every Rasta I know, every Black man I know loved him from Dick Gregory. Because he was speaking truth to power in a way that was just irrefutable. But it's also why he was demonized. Yeah, this is fascinating.
It is. Before we end, I literally just texted Tyreen this clip that I want her to cue up, because I want to end on his voice. And then we got some Kanye queued up too, because why not? It's Friday, y'all. It's like, woo, we made it. All you
need to know is I got me some grapes. No, I'm ordering from the Bolt food delivery, and I got me some grapes they're going to the grocery store. I got me some tangerines. I got me some water. Listen, Dick Gregory is changing the community.
I like it.
All right. Well, thanks for the story. Let's listen to the clip. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's listen to the clip. It's him. This is him. The other interview was actually a one-on-one interview. This is an interview where he was at the State of Black Union. It's like 3 minutes long. It's so powerful. So we're going to listen to him play us out, and then Tyreen will play a little bit of Kanye just to get us in the mood for some celebration and some weekend. Next week is our last week of Black History Boot Camp, y'all. Next week, we won't be here this weekend. We do not do Black History Boot Camp live on the weekend. So tell a friend, tell a sister, tell somebody in your family to join us on Monday and walk with us for the last week of Black History Boot Camp. So many of you bought Black Family 5K shirts. So this week is leading into a week of celebration where we're going to be gathering with our families. And it's going to be the last week of the official 2024 Girl Trek season, because we like a sports team, y'all. We're going to recalibrate, regroup, and holler back in January. So we're getting ready to end very strong, and we're so grateful for all the people who have been walking with us. So play this out, Tyreen, and then we'll see you on Monday.
Now, let me say this. All we said here, what needs to be said, we think an illegitimate child is a child that don't know where their daddy is. America is an illegitimate child because she has no mother. And this is what the problem is. If I work in a coal mine, in a steel mill, and I come here today and put on a suit but don't take a bath, you got stink sitting up here with you. And what has happened to America, we ain't never cleaned up the filth over 400 years. We just put a new suit on and a new dress on and then wonder who's stinking. It's you the one that's stinking.
That's what this is. And until we clean this out, until we clean it up, my mama used to grab me and wash my face. America ain't got no mama that's washing her face. She'd pick my nose when it needed to be opened up. She'd look in my ears. All we do is we went from this filth we was in to putting on some new clothes, and nobody has said, hey, somewhere we got to apologize. First to black women. White women's okay, but that black woman went through racist white system and sexist black me. And we ain't never said what you've been through. And in spite of that, look at that black woman. Look at Kathy Hughes. She didn't have the privilege of a ladies' movement when she's putting that empire together. Look at Dorothy Height, huh? Look at all these women that have come through, the late Dolores Tucker. Look at what's going on now with Ife Williams talking about Sojourner Truth, and we will have that statue in the White House. Our women, if you think this sister just a politician, what she had to go through to get there, cause she was a woman. And we have never slowed up and said, thank you, ladies, thank you, thank you, thank you. And until we do that, until we're able to do that, I look at Dr. Condoleezza Rice, hear me, and we tolerate it. She has more PhDs than the president's whole cabinet. Huh? Huh? Hear me. And you hear me too, black folks. They call her Condi, but they never call Madeleine Albright's Maddie, never call Janet Reno Janny. Huh? Okay? That's all right. They call Henry Kissinger Dr. Henry Kissinger. And let me tell you, she don't see nothing wrong with it. Let me tell you something. They got a soda pop in America. Blacker than her, they call Dr. Pepper. Huh? Huh? Dr. Pepper. Huh? Lady. Huh? And if you go to the store today when you leave here and don't ask for it by its full title, say, give me a pepper, they'll give you a chili pepper.